Hello, I'm your host Jim McLean. Welcome back to another episode of the Banterflix movie review show here on NVTV. Let's see what movies we'll be talking about tonight. We'll be reviewing Salem's Lot, which is out in cinemas now. Ahead of the release of Gladiator II, we'll look back at Scott's original. And we'll wrap up with our latest pick of the screams for spooky season from Fright Club NI. So that's what we've lined up for you this week. Joining me in the studio this evening is Joe McElroy.
Good evening, Jim.
And Leo McGuigan.
Hi, Jim.
Joe, good to see you back on that side of the studio, but you did a fab job, I have to say, when you were hosting a couple of weeks ago. So that's my guest this week. Let's kick things off with a bit of movie news.
The world's coming after you.
His fate is written. Shall we write yours too?
If anything happens to them, there's no place that I won't go to kill you. That is written.
So that's a little clip from Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning, and the reason we're talking about this in the movie news section is we could soon be seeing a trailer for the next Mission Impossible movie. Now, originally it was going to be titled Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 2. That's not the case anymore. It's going to be its own thing now. Tom is back. He's going to be running his way on screen. Hopefully we'll all get to see it on the biggest IMAX screen possible. I'm excited. I like a bit of Tom. But Joe, are you excited by the thought of our next outing for Ethan Hunt?
I'm looking forward to going over the whole series again in the run up to this one, because I believe it's supposed to be the last one, but then again, the third was supposed to be the last, the second was supposed to be the last. Can't trust Tom Cruise and his promise to perform the most death-defying stunts to entertain us. So yeah, I am excited for it, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes from for the second part.
Yeah, like you love the original. We got a lovely trip to see it over at the Cineworld, and the IMAX screen just looked absolutely fab. And I guess we all knew a lot about the making of that film because it was shot during the pandemic. We all remember that famous rant that was caught with Tom losing the bat behind set. Leo, I'm sure, is the director amongst us. You can identify with Tom's frustration during that scene, but as I said earlier, I don't know where you come down on the Mission Impossible franchise. We know you love horror and slasher movies, but are you a fan of this series?
Yeah, I love all the Mission Impossibles. I even like the second one, the much maligned MI2. I had a bit more of an affinity for them when they were, espionage thrillers like those first three. When they became these sort of action extravaganzas, they're very, very fun to behold. But if I'm rewatching them, I find myself going back to that first one and that third one a little bit more often. I really enjoyed Dead Reckoning. I agree with you, Joe. I Fallout, of the later movies is probably the apex for me. But my Mission Impossible is 3. I love Mission Impossible 3, which I think is a controversial take among some Mission Impossible fans. Don't even talk to the TV show fans. They're hardcore about the movies and their feelings. But I liked Mission Impossible 3 best of all of them. But I'm excited to see this new one, whatever it might be called.
That's something that's out next year, and I guess while we wait for a next outing for 007, that will have to fill the void. Joe, I know we're going to move on to something we have seen that is in cinemas, but you literally came running into the studio very excited about a new trailer. I know you're a Stephen King fan. More on this in just a second. But what trailers caught your attention?
It literally just came to me as sitting waiting on you. It was The Monkey. It's going to be Osgood Perkins' new film, and it's produced by James Wan as well. But my expectations going into it, I was thinking, I've known the story, and I was like, I'd be interested to see what he does with this kind of story, which is basically monkey is a monkey's paw sort of tale. But from that trailer, it looks like it's going to be a horror comedy, and I'm very excited about that, because even with Longlegs as tense and atmospheric as it is, it does have its moments of comedy, and the comedy in that works really well. So I'm interested to see how he does like a sort of strictly horror comedy. And from what I've seen so far, it just looks completely over the top and brilliant in the best way possible.
Well, with that to look forward to, didn't The Simpsons Halloween special say everything that needed to be said about the monkey paw? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Those are two films that are going to be in cinemas next year. With that, I think we'll move on and talk about a movie we have seen.
So why did you come back?
I'm here for research.
What exactly, though, are you researching?
I can see you lying back in your satin dress.
Have you noticed anything out of the ordinary in the lot recently?
Don't confess. Sundown, you're back.
There are some folks who've had some kind of unusual experiences.
So that's a look at the trailer for Salem's Lot. It's out in cinemas now. Leo, I'm going to come to you first. Ben Mears returns to his town of Jerusalem after 25 years or so away. Finds it's been overtaken by vampires. So this is the latest adaptation of King's second novel. I know Joe McElroy is a big Stephen King fan, so he will very quickly correct me if I'm wrong. But this is the third adaptation of this. We've had 2 TV movies before. First, and probably the most famous, is Tobe Hooper. More on him later in the show. So you were the person, we were originally going to talk about Terrifier 3. And you're a busy man. You're a busy filmmaker, producer, and you said, could we talk about Salem's Lot? And I said, because I'm a nice person, Leo, yes.
You did.
So was it worth letting you talk about it on the show?
Yeah, well, so the Tobe Hooper miniseries of Salem's Lot is foundational for me. I remember seeing that extremely young, and it was kind of, I think it was on TV, and it was very instrumental in me falling in love with horror. It's also one of my mum's favorite movies. And then I've read the book subsequently a number of times. I've only seen the Rob Lowe miniseries once. So I'd followed the sort of production history of this one quite extensively. And I think anyone who's sort of familiar with it will know that it was quite extensively delayed, and I think there were substantial reshoots, and I think it has arrived in a much better condition than a lot of people were expecting. I also am very surprised that it's only arrived in cinemas in other parts of the world and not in the US, where it was dropped on Max. I think technically it's fantastic. I think Gary Doberman has a really great eye, and I think he's worked really well with the cinematographer to sort of create that small town atmosphere, that small town feel. It very much felt, it's a period piece set in the 70s, felt very lived in, very authentic to that. I think it probably struggles in the sense that, it is a tome of a novel, and having to adapt that in an hour and a half, 2 hours is kind of no small task. And so there are certain things that I think could have been sacrificed for making the story a little bit more linear and giving maybe a little bit more room to the characters that did survive the adaptation. I mean, Larry Crockett is in this movie. He's a big character from the novel, big character from the miniseries. He gets a scene in this movie. I feel like you probably could have swapped out Larry Crockett for a little bit more to do with the Ben Mears storyline or the Susan storyline. So there are some things that I think, just got lost in translation. And I think it's a hard story to adapt for the format. But what we got, I thought, was really fun and really worked. And there's some very clever twists on the story and on how it unfolds. So it's a thumbs up for me. It was a pleasant surprise, and I think I would definitely recommend it.
I can't deny the fact that I hold a flame to Tobe Hooper's original, because it's one of those horror movies I watched when I was younger and it left a mark. Here, I think it's perfectly fine, perfectly serviceable, well executed, jump scares, if you want to go down to that technical. It's well executed, well made, looks visually, like you've mentioned, Leo, it looks great. There's a couple of sequences that I know aren't in the book. The key thing that's lost for me in this adaptation is the characters. You don't really get to know them that well. They show up, and I guess people who have read the book, seen the previous versions, will maybe have more of an affinity or understanding of those characters through reading the source material. But if you're coming into this just to watch the movie, I think there's not a lot of character development there. It's just moving from one set piece to another. But those set pieces are done really well. It's a perfectly fine horror movie. We're in spooky season. I don't think you'll feel too shortchanged going to see this in the cinema. Now, Joe, as I mentioned, you are not just our Stephen King aficionado, but you're also Fright Club NIs, more of them in just a moment. Was it worthwhile giving in to pressure from Leo? The constant phone calls, constant texts. I don't want to talk about Terrifier 3. I will not be on your show, Jim, if we're talking about Terrifier 3. I want to talk about Salem's Lot. Was it worth giving in?
Well, that's the thing. There was so much build up, so much pressure and everything that came with it for something that's just fine. You know, I don't think it's bad. Like, I completely agree with Leo. You hear all the stories of the troubled production and everything, and the way it's, you know, being sort of held hostage in a way by Warner Brothers. Like, oh, we don't know what to do. We don't know what to do. And then, well, now it's out. It's finally released in the cut that it has now, and it's just fine. You know, it's the problems with it are, you know, exactly what you said. There's not enough in the characters. It seems like Gary Dolan was sort of concerned with, I have to have all these set pieces from the novel in this allotted time of about 2 hours. But in doing that, he sacrifices so much in terms of the character, and it feels very rushed when you're watching it in that sense. You know, even from the beginning, you're like, oh, they're opening with this here, and then they go to obviously Ben coming into town, but then as soon as he's here, you know, the vampires start taking over and stuff like that, and you're like, well, hang on, I don't remember that when I was reading. I remember just being sort of swept away in this tale in this town, where you see the slow and gradual decay of this town because of this infestation of vampires. So for me, it's perfectly fine. But the thing about it, I was reading, there is like a 3-hour cut of it. I'd be very interested to see in that. I think it would be, you know, much better for having that extra time in it. But when it comes to, you know, adapting Stephen King, you know, I think the issue isn't in case of, oh, I have a big book, how am I going to do this in a short space of time? Because I was thinking on the way over here, sure, David Cronenberg did something similar with The Dead Zone. It's a big book as well, but he condensed it to about an hour and a half, and he did a fantastic job with that. So it does take a certain skill to streamline something like that, and I don't think that was here with this here, but I think that was maybe just down to studio pushback and saying, you have to have this, that, and the other, and he sort of had this box ticking exercise to make a piece of what's essentially, you know, popcorn horror.
Yeah, I would agree with you. For me, I know it's comparing apples and pears. The shadow, the batty kind of shadow that looms largely over this for me is Midnight Mass on Netflix. I know it's a different thing, but it's that sense when you've got a miniseries, you can allow character development. You can give characters a bit of space between all the action sequences. We've already had, I know, 2 TV movies that have been given more time. That's for me. I guess I'd love to see a Salem's Lot in that style. Mike Flanagan, if you're watching, maybe, I don't know. Now, as I say, we're going to take a little break from spooky season. In a couple of weeks' time, we are going to see the release of Gladiator II. And I thought we'd take the opportunity, because it was given a limited re-release back in cinemas, unsurprisingly, ahead of the next film coming out. I thought we'd look back at Ridley Scott's 2000 feature, Gladiator.
At my signal, unleash hell.
Who is he?
I'm required to kill, so I kill.
Tell me your name.
My name is Maximus Decimus Meridius. Commander of the armies of the North. Loyal servant to the true Emperor, Marcus Aurelius. Father to a murdered son. Husband to a murdered wife. And I will have my vengeance. In this life or the next.
So that's a look at Gladiator. As I say, it was given a limited re-release back in cinemas. You can seek this out in DVD, Blu-ray or VOD services. It may as well be streaming. Now, Leo, you have a confession because you told us, literally as we sat down here in the studio in Belfast, you had never seen Gladiator before. Now, you're a cinema scholar, so I assumed naively this would just be a film you would have seen. So the idea of Maximus Decimus Meridius and his quest for vengeance against the Emperor of Rome is pretty fresh for you. So this is a first-time viewing for this film.
Yeah, remarkably fresh. It was always a bit of a blot on my ledger, shamefully, for years that I hadn't seen this film. But I I'm delighted that I got to see it in the circumstances in which I did. I saw it in a beautiful screen in Cineworld with a pretty big crowd, and I'm probably saying something that people have been saying for a quarter of a century, but I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a masterpiece. I mean, I cannot believe that it was as good as it was, and I've been hearing raves about it for years. It's a big favorite in my family. It's a big favorite among many of my filmmaker friends. I had no idea just the amount of intrigue that's involved and just the amount of relationships and characters and sort of it's very much a tapestry that you can get very emotionally involved in, whether it's with Russell Crowe's, character, or even Joaquin Phoenix's character, who's much more layered and complex as a villain than I think, than I certainly was expecting. And Connie Nielsen's character, I could not get over how gripping it was. And it's, it's a 2 hour and 35 minute movie, and it certainly did not feel as such. I will say that the first thing that occurred to me as it ended was, I don't quite know why you would make a sequel to this. So I'm very excited to see what they do. But it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how you follow that up.
It's interesting you say it, because the idea for the sequel has been mooted for years. They've talked about this. They've talked about even Russell Crowe reprising, and kind of the idea of kind of reincarnations of that character. It's been around for a while, but now we have our very own dreamboat that is Paul Mescal, going to see what he conjures up. We can't review Gladiator II because it's not out yet. Rewatching it for the show, it's just a film. It's one of those films like Jaws or anything like that, where no matter whether I'm watching it and it's been on for an hour, it's been on for 15 minutes, 2 hours, I'll find myself sitting down to watch. Stunning. My concern now with Gladiator 2, from what we've kind of seen from the trailer, is the kind of the more dominance of CGI, and we kind of saw that a little bit in Napoleon, Scott's last big epic. I mean, I adore Ridley Scott. We'll sit in this room now and talk about the film, how much we love it or how much we hate it. He wouldn't care. He'd quite happily swear at us, not even underneath his breath, and tell him, well, that's great. He thinks it's a masterpiece. And so do I. Stunning, great score, with Hans Zimmer. Just kind of trying to think of different things, Leo, that you've mentioned. Just a fantastic film that I happily rewatch from time to time. And like you, I'm perplexed by the idea for a sequel, but it's got my money. I'm going to go see it. Joe, what about you?
Yeah, I'm on the same boat as both of you. I think this is a terrific film. It stands as one of Ridley Scott's best, and it's interesting when it came out. It came at a time when, not his career was flagging as such, as like he didn't have that big film that was released, that he brought out of himself in a while, and then Gladiator just comes along and just blows everything out of the water. You just think of the real heft and the scale of those battle sequences from the very beginning, and then even in the Colosseum. I'm going back to like old cliches and phrases. You don't see anything like that anymore. I think you haven't even seen it even in Napoleon, as much as I really enjoyed that aspect of that film. But there's a lot of heft to that and real sort of physical filmmaking on the show. And the performances across the board are fantastic. Like, I don't think either you mentioned Oliver Reed in his last role. He's larger than life in real life, and here it's the exact same. He's just absolutely fantastic. And Richard Harrison, his small part was terrific as well. But when I see the trailer for Gladiator 2, I'm like, I don't know how it can live up to something like this one. Like, with Gladiator, it feels like you are back in ancient Rome again. Whereas when you watch the trailer, you can see it's a lot more CGI, digital makeup added to the proceedings. Whereas here, you feel like I'm walking into the Colosseum of Maximus. I am walking down the streets of Rome. I am at this battle at the very beginning. So it'll be very difficult to see how the sequel lives up to it. But as the original stands, it'll always stand on its own 2 feet. And it's been 24, 25 years since its release, and here we are talking about it and saying how it holds up as well now as it did back then.
Yeah, without a doubt, it left a legacy. I know it left a legacy upon me. I can't walk through long grass and just gently touch it without hearing Hans Zimmer's dulcet tones playing in the background. And just as you mentioned with Oliver Reed, I know we're going to move on, we'll have to go back to our spooky stuff, but at that time, it was the first film I really remember knowing about all the behind the scenes stuff and all the stuff that happened with Oliver Reed when he passed away and how they finished that role with using computer and CGI to finish that role. So yeah, timeless film. I'm nervously excited about the sequel. As I say, Denzel Washington, can't go wrong. Dreamboat Paul, can't go wrong. So yeah, we'll have to wait and see. We will review it when it hits cinemas. But for now, as I say, it's October. We're in the middle of spooky season. So it's over to Gav Logan from Fright Club NI with his latest Pick of the Screams.
David Gardner just woke up to a nightmare in his own backyard. But no one will listen.
We landed right back there, right behind the hill.
No one will believe.
I told you, he needs psychiatric help.
And soon, no one will be left.
Dad? Are you okay, Dad?
Fine.
Because something strange is happening to the people of Willow Creek.
Everything's fine now.
And David Gardner is about to find out why.
David! I'm gonna find my mom and dad! I'm back! No!
Hi guys, I'm Gav from the Fright Club, and I am back with this week's Pick of the Screams. Tobe Hooper's seminal horror classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, recently celebrated its 50th anniversary. 50 years, holy hell. And it was also voted as the greatest horror film of all time by Variety magazine. Hard to argue with that one. So this week I'm picking, as a tie-in, I'm picking another Tobe Hooper film. It is Invaders from Mars, which is available to stream on Freevee and Amazon Prime. Invaders from Mars was released in 1986 and is a remake of the classic 1953 science fiction film of the same name. It didn't do very well when it was released and got pretty much panned by critics overall. However, I have a soft spot for this one because I'm a big fan of 80s cinema, and you know, it has a lot of charm to it. It's got some fantastic 80s special effects by the legendary Stan Winston, and it was also written by Dan O'Bannon, who of course wrote the original script for Alien and created those characters and that story. And he also wrote the screenplay for Return of the Living Dead, which is another 80s horror classic. So we have a soft spot for this one. It's not one of Tobe Hooper's best films, or certainly not one of his most popular films. And it was kind of came at the back end of a pretty difficult time, actually, for Tobe Hooper in terms of success. But as I said, it is, you know, it's a film that we can look back now and enjoy, and we hope you enjoy it as well. So go and watch it now. All the best.
Canon Films presents Tobe Hooper's Invaders from Mars. There's no place on Earth to hide.
So that's Gav Logan from Fright Club NI with his latest choice, Invaders from Mars. Tobe Hooper, as we mentioned earlier on, with Salem's Lot. Everything in this show is secretly pre-planned. It's all organised. It's a finely working, finely oiled machine. There we go. So this is the remake 1950s schlocky original that I have a true affinity for. I have very vivid memories of watching this kind of schlocky sci-fi filled with post-Cold War paranoia about Martians coming down, taking over humanity, and all that stands in the way is a young boy and a teacher. And now here we have Tobe Hooper's remake, which on paper this should be fab. We have Tobe Hooper directing, we have Dan O'Bannon involved in the screenplay, we have Christopher Young working on the score, and we have Stan Winston doing some special effects. This should be fabulous. I have mixed feelings about it, but Joe, I'm going to come to you first. Where do you stand? So this is available in Freevee now. It's also available on Prime, I think, as well. What do you think of this?
you left out a key component there, Jim. And I think it's why you don't really like it that much. It's the old canon coat to it. No, I remember seeing this years and years ago, and I didn't make much of it. And then when you said we were doing it for the show as well, I was like, oh, I don't know what to think watching this. And watching it, I was like, you know, I can kind of see a bit of charm to it, because I always have like a bit of love for Tobe Hooper, and especially when it comes to his films that aren't as big a home run. Like, again, going back to Stephen King, I even like The Mangler to an extent, even though it's all over the place. But with this here, I really like, you know, the likes of the creature effects and stuff like that, and the acting for a lot of the parts over the top, and it's a bit disjointed, but then the set design's great as well, like that matte painting of going over the hill to where the Martians are supposed to be. You know, really marred that end of the artistry, but as a whole it doesn't really add up. Like, when you think about sort of Hooper's contemporaries and what they were doing in the 80s, you know, you had Cronenberg remaking The Fly from the 50s, you had John Carpenter remaking the Thing from Another World, and those films had stuff to say. Invaders from Mars has nothing to say, essentially. It doesn't even comment really on the Cold War as such, you know, in terms of, you know, what it was like in the 50s compared to the 80s. Could have done something maybe interesting there. But yeah, I think with the talent involved, it just doesn't really work as well as it should. But, you know, for everything else and around it, you know, I do enjoy the score to an extent. The effects are quite good, you know, good for the time, you know, the practical effects of the creatures and that. But I don't really think it's one of Hooper's better offerings, put it that way.
I would agree with you that. I think we haven't even heard from Leo yet. I think you're kinder than I am. I mean, I will be honest and say I find this boring. I find this dull. Yes, all the things you mentioned, maybe it is also because I love the original, and that painting you're talking about of that scene, that just looks identical to that original. And I know, I think when we were in lockdown, we were doing the show remotely, I went through that phase of going back and watching those kind of 50s sci-fi movies, like The Day the Earth Stood Still. Invaders from Mars is not up to that standard, but yeah, there's a charm to it. So Leo, I'm just, because I'm going to assume, had you seen Invaders from Mars before? Because I know you hadn't seen Gladiator, that took me by surprise. So had you seen this before, and if so, are you a fan of it?
I haven't seen the original. I haven't seen the 1953 original, and I hadn't seen this movie either. I think I've seen probably like 5 films in my entire life coming away from this evening. No, but I hadn't seen this either. I kind of completely agree with Joe. I do think a lot of the furniture of this movie is really fun. You know, and by that I mean I love the set, and I love the cinematography. Interesting parallel with Salem's Lot, with the young protagonist and the adult who kind of are in this together against outside forces. My biggest takeaway from it was how much it wore its Invasion of the Body Snatchers love on its sleeve. Even the ending, you know, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's a final shot in this movie that very much seems like a Kevin McCarthy kind of reference. I kind of understand the idea that it's not really saying anything. It's kind of junk food in that sense, but it is fun, and I know that John Carpenter and filmmakers like that were definitely more effective at working the social commentary into their work, especially their studio work or their more high budget work. But I don't necessarily have a problem with Tobe Hooper just playing with the sort of the canon toys in this one. I very much enjoyed it, and I actually didn't find it boring, Jim. I did find that it went quite quickly, and I also feel like it's maybe a little bit more aware of its sillier traits than some people might think. I think it's firmly got its tongue in its cheek in certain regards, and I appreciated that about it for sure.
Well, look, it's a good thing that we at least on one of the movies this evening disagree, because it's not great for the viewers when we all sit around and talk about how much we love this movie, how much we love that movie. At least when someone says, no, well, I completely disagree with everything you're saying. So at least we have a bit of confrontation to wrap up this week's show. So that is unfortunately all we have time for. I mean, a mixed bag this evening from Gav from Fright Club. I know he'll have one more choice for next week's Halloween Witchy special. You've that to look forward to. But for now, all that's left for me to do this evening is thank my two guests. So thank you very much, Joe.
Thanks, Jim.
Thanks very much, Leo.
Thank you so much, Jim.
Thanks very much for watching at home. We'll be back next week. But for now, until then, goodbye.